In this video, I'm gonna give you 5 tips that will improve your videography and photography when you're using your Canon M6 Mark II. Coming up. Hi, my name is Roger, and on this channel I talk about cameras, tech gear and videography, and sometimes photography. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That will really help me a lot. And if you want to, please consider hitting the subscribe button down below. I would really appreciate that too. So in this video, I'm gonna give you 5 tips on how to improve your photography and videography when you are using the Canon M6 Mark II. And these 5 tips are all features that this camera comes with. So without further ado, let's get started on tip number 1. Now, I don't know what you use your camera for, but me, I use my camera both for professional client work, and I also use my camera for myself for private, personal stuff. And sometimes I don't have the time to import my files that's on the memory card from one job to another. That means that all the files from several different things might be stored on the memory card at the same time. And this might be a problem when you want to organize your files afterwards when you're going to import the files on your computer. If everything is stored at the same file, you have to look through everything in order to get that organized. But inside of the Canon M6 Mark II, you have the option of creating new folders inside of the memory card. And the new folders that you create, you can dedicate one of the new folders to be the main folder that all your files from that job are going to be stored in. So let's say you have a wedding photography one day, you select one folder to be the main folder that all the files from that job are going to be stored in. And then when you go on to your next job, you create a new folder, and then you select that folder to be the new folder that your new files are going to be stored in. And this makes it a lot easier for you to get your files organized when you're then going to import it to your computer or hard drive. Now, to create a new folder inside of your memory card, you just go into the menu system of your camera, you go over to the yellow page, and that's the wrench on top, and then in tab number 1 on the top, you can create a new folder. Now, as you create new folders, you can't change the name of the folder, but the camera will change the name and increase the number of each folder, so you have some kind of organization on your folders. So that's my tip number 1 for you on how to be more organized when it comes to the files inside of your memory card. Time lapses. Something that's really in right now and something that a lot of people want to be able to do. If you don't know what a time lapse is, I'm gonna try and explain that in a real easy way. When you shoot video, you normally have 24 frames inside of 1 second. And those 24 frames inside of 1 second to the eye looks like a video or looks like normal movements. Now, in a time lapse, you don't put 24 frames inside of 1 second, you might put only 1 frame inside of every second. And if you put 1 frame inside every second for, let's say, 24 seconds, and you put those 24 frames over 24 seconds together, you then get 1 second of video out of those 24 seconds. And if you shoot 1 picture every second for, let's say, 48 seconds, and you put those pictures together, then you get a 2-second video out of those 48 seconds. This means you get a lot of information or a lot of movement in those 2 seconds. And if you do this over a certain amount of time, you get a time lapse, a video that moves really fast. Now, some cameras, to be able to shoot 1 second every second for, let's say, 48 seconds, you can't do this inside of the camera. For some cameras, you have to buy something that's called an intervalometer. In this intervalometer that you connect to your camera, you then set how many pictures you want to be taken over how many seconds, and this intervalometer then sends signals to your camera so it knows when to shoot every picture. Even high-end cameras needs an intervalometer to be able to shoot time lapses. But the Canon M6 Mark II, you don't need an intervalometer to be able to shoot time lapses. Inside of this camera, you actually have two ways to shoot time lapses. The first way to shoot a time lapse with the camera is to put the camera in video mode, then go into the menu system, go into the red menu, that's the camera menu, the first menu that you come to, and then tab number 1, and all the way down at the end you have time lapse movie. If you go into the time lapse movie setting, you have 3 predetermined settings for a time lapse, or you can go into the customize menu, and here you can customize how you want your time lapse to be. What's really nice about this time lapse movie setting inside of the Canon M6 Mark II is that even though the camera takes individual pictures in this setting, the camera compiles and put together each frame into a finished time-lapse movie. So the end file that you get out of the camera is already a finished time-lapse movie. In other cameras, you don't get this option. You only get each single frame. You then have to put together your time-lapse movie in post by yourself. And that's a really nice thing about the Canon M6 Mark II. You get the finished time-lapse right out of the camera. The second way to shoot a time-lapse inside of the Canon M6 Mark II is that it comes with an intervalometer inside of the camera. To get to this option, you have to put your camera in manual mode. Then you go into the menu, the red menu, the camera menu, over to tab number 6. Then you go down to interval timer. And when you go into the interval timer, you can press info detail settings. Here you can set how long you want your camera to shoot for and how many shots you want the camera to take in that time. But here in this setting, you do have to put together your time lapse in post by importing every picture that the camera has taken and then put them together into a nice time lapse. And this might be unnecessary to say, but when you're gonna shoot a time lapse, you want to have the camera completely still. You really need to use a tripod to get that time lapse looking really good. But if you want movement in your time lapse, I highly recommend that you use a motorized slider. When it comes to the movement of the slider, you can preset where it should start and where it should end. Have you ever been out shooting a sunset? You can't believe how beautiful it is, and you just want to capture that beautiful landscape in a picture. And you take that photo and you look at it and it doesn't look anything like the thing that you're seeing with your own eyes. That's because your eyes can see dynamic range a lot better than the camera. Now there are a lot of differences in cameras in how good they are in capturing dynamic range, but no camera can capture dynamic range the way that you see dynamic range with your own eyes. Most cameras have a more narrow dynamic range than the human eye. This is why on a sunny day you either have to choose to blow out your highlights in order to capture what's in the shadows, or crush your shadows in order to see what's inside of those highlights or in the bright areas of your picture. And this is why you don't get the same picture in the camera that your eye is seeing when you're looking at a beautiful sunset. But there are ways to get that beautiful picture that you see with your own eyes into the camera. This is called HDR photography, or high dynamic range photography. The way the camera does this is it takes one picture that's kind of neutral when it comes to the dynamic range. It sets itself to natural when it comes to the highlights and the shadows. Then it takes another picture, but this picture is underexposed. This means that you see what's inside of the highlights. Then it takes a third picture that's overexposed, and this means you see what's inside of the shadows. Then the camera compiles these three pictures, the normal picture, the underexposed and the overexposed, and it merges these three pictures into one picture. Now, some years ago you had to do this by yourself. You had to take the normally exposed picture, then you had to change your settings to get that underexposed picture and then snap that, and then you had to change your settings again to get that overexposed picture, and then you had to snap that, and then in post you had to put together these three pictures into one picture. But now the camera does this for you, or at least the Canon M6 Mark II does this for you. Now, the way to do this inside of the Canon M6 Mark II is that you have to put your camera into manual mode. You go into the menu system, into the first one, the camera, the red menu, and then you go into tab number 5. Here you can go into HDR mode. Now, what's important is that you use a tripod for this, because it takes 3 pictures, and if you take these 3 pictures handheld, there are some chances that you move the camera slightly and the pictures won't align up against each other, and you don't get that really nice quality inside of the picture. So I highly recommend that if you're going to use the HDR mode inside of the camera, put your camera on a tripod so that the camera is completely still when you take the 3 photos. When it comes to high dynamic range in video, I made a video about the CineStyle picture profile that you should check out if you want to get high dynamic range in your video. The video profiles in the Canon M6 Mark II, it's not that good when it comes to high dynamic range. So I really recommend that you download the CineStyle picture profile and use that, and then color grade your footage in post. This will give you more dynamic range to work with. Have you ever wanted to take a macro shot of something and you just can't seem to get the subject in focus all the way around? And when you study the picture, you can see that you have really good focus in the middle of the picture, but as you go out, you can see that you lose focus when it comes to the edges of your subject. You can do something about this. You can raise your aperture. You can go from, let's say, an aperture of 2 to an aperture of f12, but then you will get everything in the background in focus too. So what can you do when you just want that one subject in focus and you still want to have that blurry background or bokeh in the background? Then you can use something that's called focus bracketing. This is a setting inside of the camera that gives you a wide depth of field even though you're using a wide aperture. Now, what focus bracketing does is that it makes your camera take a set of photos and you decide how many photos you want your camera to take, where in photo number 1 it starts with the focus at 1 point, and I recommend that you start your focusing at the thing that's closest to you in the frame, and then the camera changes this focus all the way through in all those pictures that you have set the camera to take. And then in post, you can merge all these pictures together, and then in the finished picture, you have the object all in focus, or you have a wide depth of field, but you still have maintained that wide aperture of, let's say, 1.8 or f2, so you still have that blurry background in the final product. Now, to get into the focus bracketing settings on your Canon M6 Mark II, you go into the menu, into the first menu, the red menu, the camera, then you go over to tab number 5, and in the bottom you have the settings for focus bracketing. So you can go into that, go to enable, and here you can change how many shots you want your camera to take in order to get that fine tuning of your depth of field. In some camera groups on Facebook, I sometimes see people asking for remote controls for their camera. And I just want to say, for this tip, you probably already have a remote control for your camera inside of your pocket, and that's your phone. because with the Canon M6 Mark II, you can connect that camera to your smartphone using the Canon Connect app. And in that app, you can remotely control when to take a photo with your camera. You can remotely change your settings inside of your camera. So I highly recommend, if you have an M6 Mark II or a Canon M50 or any Canon camera, download the Camera Connect app from Canon and you have an automatic remote control right in your pocket. The Canon M6 Mark II, it comes with a flip up screen. This is probably the most negative thing about the camera because, first of all, if you want to have something in your hot shoe mount, let's say a microphone or something else, and you want to flip up your screen if you're gonna do some vlogging, you're not able to see yourself and the screen won't flip all the way up because there is something in the way. Now, if you do what I did, I got a cage for my camera. So I can put a microphone on the side on the cold shoe mount that comes with the cage. This means I now can flip up the screen if I'm gonna do some vlogging and I can see myself in the screen. But when you flip the screen up and you want to change some settings when you're filming yourself, sometimes you can't press the button because the screen is too close to the camera body. It only changes the focus, and this is really annoying sometimes. And if you want to flip your screen a little bit back just to be able to touch those settings, the screen flips around and now your screen is upside down. And the camera is really fine-tuned into when it flips the screen upside down. But I want to show you something that might make things a little bit easier. If you turn your camera to the side and you see the screen from the side, and you try to push the screen a little bit back, you can see that the whole mechanism that holds the screen pushes back. And I guess this is where the sensor inside of the camera is. It's in the whole mechanism that holds the screen. So if you push the screen back to its original place, you hold the bottom part of the mechanism and then push your screen a little bit back so it only flips back. Now you can see that you have to push your screen just a little bit farther back before it flips the screen around. This makes it so that you are able to change your settings without the screen flipping upside down. So this might be something that you can do when you want to change your settings if you're doing some vlogging with the Canon M6 Mark II. And now I just want to give you a little bonus tip, and this isn't something that's related to the camera, but more to a specific accessory to the camera. One of the more popular microphones for cameras is the Rode Video Micro. This is a really small, a really good quality microphone, and it doesn't need additional batteries. You just plug it into the camera and it works great. But sometimes when you have the Rode Video Micro connected to your camera and you move your camera around, it flips a little bit upside down and you can hear this flipping in the video. But if you take a closer look at your Rode Video Micro, you can see that the screw thing that tightens the Rode Video Micro to your camera, it has these grooves or holes, or I don't know what to call them. It has these folds all the way around. And these folds are not there by accident. No. Because what you can do is when you connect or tighten your Rode Video Micro to your camera, you then put your wire inside of one of these gaps. That makes the Rode Video Micro stand a lot more still and you don't get that flipping around sound in your video. So that was just a little bonus tip from me to you at the end of this video. So that's it for this video. So I really hope you got something out of this video. If you did, please give me a like, that would really help me a lot. I try to come out with one new video every week, and like I said, I talk about cameras, tech gear and videography, and sometimes photography. So if this is something that you're into, I really would appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, and if you do, click that bell notification too, then you will get a notification every time I come out with a new video. So that's the video for this week. Thank you for watching. Hope you come back someday, and maybe I will see you in another video. Bye.